Silas Blackwood was supposed to be 7,000 miles away, negotiating a critical jet fuel merger in the scorching heat of Dubai. Instead, he was sitting on a park bench in broad daylight, holding a baby that wasn't his and Camilla's, exactly 10 minutes from the home they shared. Camilla froze behind the trunk of a blooming cherry blossom tree, her breath catching in her throat as the visual reality shattered the lie she had been fed. Silas wasn't wearing the bespoke tuxedo he had dramatically packed 2 days ago, claiming he needed to look impeccable for the sheiks. He was wearing a faded vintage t-shirt and jeans, clothes he claimed to hate when he was with his wife, and he was laughing. It was a warm, open, fatherly laugh that Camilla hadn't heard in years, directed entirely at the 6-month-old infant bouncing on his knee and the young, stylish woman leaning affectionately against his shoulder. The betrayal wasn't just in the infidelity, it was in the audacity. He looked at the child with a pride he had never shown Camilla, completely unaware that his boring, barren wife was standing 50 feet away, holding the evidence that would eventually dismantle his entire life. He thought he was untouchable, protected by his arrogance and his belief that Camilla was too passive to ever suspect him. He was wrong. Before we watch Silas Blackwood lose his fortune, his reputation, and his freedom, subscribe and tell me in the comments. Is emotional cheating worse than physical cheating? Camilla didn't scream. She didn't storm the bench or throw her matcha latte in his face to cause a scene. That was what a scorned wife would do. But Camilla wasn't just a wife. She was a Kensington. And Kensingtons did not make scenes, they made strategies. She knew that if she confronted him now, he would spin a lie, claim it was a cousin's baby, or worse, he would hide his assets before she could get to them. She needed undeniable proof. She quietly raised her phone, the lens trembling ever so slightly in her manicured hand, and snapped 3 high-resolution photos. One of his smiling face, one of the woman kissing his cheek, and one of the baby in his arms. The shutter made a soft click, but the sound was drowned out by the park's ambient noise. She checked the screen. The images were crystal clear. The metadata stamped the location, Botanical Gardens, New York City. Not Dubai. She watched as Silas handed the giggling baby back to the woman, checked his platinum watch, a gift Camilla had bought him, and pulled out his phone. A second later, Camilla's own phone buzzed in her hand. The screen lit up with his face and the contact name, Husband Dubai. He was calling her. From the bench, a wave of nausea hit her, but she swallowed it down. This was the test. If she failed this moment, she would lose the element of surprise. She stared at the ringing phone, then at the man sitting mere yards away. He was about to lie to her voice while she watched his lips move. She swiped to answer, forcing her voice to remain steady, preparing to give him the rope he would eventually use to hang himself. "Hello, darling," she said, her eyes locked on his back. "How is the desert?" Silas sighed loudly into the receiver, a performance worthy of an Oscar. "It's brutal, Camilla. Just endless meetings and this unbearable heat. I haven't slept in 20 hours. I miss you." He was smiling at the other woman as he said it, reaching out to stroke her hair. Camilla's grip on the phone tightened until her knuckles turned white. He wasn't just lying. He was mocking her intelligence. "I miss you too, Silas," she lied, her voice dripping with a sweetness that masked the venom rising in her throat. "Don't work too hard. I'm just gardening. Being boring, as usual." "Well, someone has to keep the house standing," he chuckled, dismissive as always. "I have to run, sweetie. The investors are waiting in the conference room." "Go get them," she whispered. He hung up. Camilla watched him put the phone away and immediately lean in to kiss the other woman. The conference room was a park bench. The investors were his secret family. She turned around and walked back to her car in silence, her heels clicking rhythmically on the pavement. He thought he was playing a game of chess with a pawn. He had no idea he had just made his opening move against the queen. He had woken up a billionaire, but he didn't know that by the time she was finished with him, he wouldn't even be able to afford the coffee he was currently drinking. The war had begun. The drive back to the Blackwood estate was a blur of red taillights and white-hot rage, but by the time Camilla walked through the mahogany double doors of her home, the rage had calcified into something colder and far more dangerous: calculation. She didn't go to the bedroom to cry into her pillows. She went straight to the library, poured herself a glass of sparkling water, and sat in the high-backed leather chair that had belonged to her grandfather, the founder of the Kensington Empire. She needed to see how far Silas was willing to take this performance. At 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a video request. Camilla took a deep breath, smoothed her hair, and accepted the call. Silas's face filled the screen. He was wearing a plush white hotel robe, his hair wet as if he had just showered. The background was carefully curated, a neutral beige wall, a generic abstract painting, and heavy curtains drawn tight to block out the sun. "Good morning, beautiful," Silas chirped, rubbing his eyes theatrically. "God, the jet lag is killing me. It's 5 a.m. here. The sun is just coming up over the Burj Khalifa." Camilla stared at him. He was sitting in a hotel room in Midtown Manhattan, likely less than 3 miles from where she sat. "You look exhausted, Silas," she said, her voice steady. "Did the meetings go late?" "Until 2 a.m., he lied smoothly, taking a sip from a coffee mug. "These oil tycoons don't sleep, but I think I've got them hooked. I'm doing this for us, Camilla. For the company. You know that, right?" "For us," she repeated, tasting the bitterness of the words. "Listen," Silas said, leaning closer to the camera, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "I have a small administrative hiccup. The hotel's credit system is down, and my corporate card is flagged because of the foreign location. I need you to authorize a transfer from our joint emergency liquidity account, just to cover the suite and the client dinners." Camilla's eyes narrowed imperceptibly. The emergency liquidity account held their rainy day cash, money meant for medical crises or catastrophic failures. "How much do you need, Silas?" "Just $250,000, he said quickly, as if asking for $20. "Security deposits, retainer fees for the local council, it adds up. I'll replace it as soon as the merger bonus hits next month." He wasn't just cheating on her physically. He was financing the affair with their life savings. He needed that money for the woman in the park, for the townhouse, for the life he was building behind Camilla's back. "I can do that," Camilla said, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'll handle it right now." "You're a lifesaver, babe," Silas grinned, looking relieved. "I'd be lost without you. Now, I have to jump in the shower again to wake up. I'll call you tonight. Or your morning. Time zones are a nightmare." "A nightmare," Camilla agreed. "Sleep well, Silas." The screen went black. Camilla set the phone down on the heavy oak desk. He thought he had just secured a lifeline. In reality, he had just handed her the weapon she would use to execute him. He had committed financial fraud against his own wife, on record. She opened her laptop. It was time to follow the money. The glow of the laptop screen illuminated Camilla's face in the darkened library. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, hesitating for only a fraction of a second before logging into the Blackwood Joint Trust portal. She had always let Silas manage the day-to-day expenses, a decision he claimed was to spare her pretty head from the math. She now realized it was to keep her blind. She navigated to the emergency liquidity fund. The balance was healthy, or it had been. She watched the screen refresh. A pending transaction was already sitting in the queue, initiated by Silas moments ago. $250,000. The destination wasn't a hotel in Dubai. It wasn't a law firm or a jet fuel conglomerate. The funds were being wired to a domestic LLC named Consulting Fees and Logistics. Camilla opened a second tab. She was a Kensington. She knew how to peel back the layers of a shell company. She ran the LLC's registration number through a private database her family used for vetting potential partners. The search took 10 seconds. Consulting Fees and Logistics was registered 3 weeks ago. The registered agent wasn't a business consultant. It was a real estate holding firm in the Upper East Side. And the memo line on the LLC's filing didn't say consulting. It said, Escrow Deposit, 144 Bleecker Street. Camilla sat back, the air leaving her lungs. He wasn't paying for client dinners. He was putting a down payment on a house. A house for her, the woman in the park. Silas was draining their marriage insurance policy to build a nest for his mistress. He was stealing Camilla's security to fund his betrayal. A normal wife might have called the bank to freeze the transfer. She might have called him screaming, demanding an explanation. But Camilla knew that stopping the money now would only alert him. If she froze the account, Silas would know she was onto him. He would panic, hide his tracks, delete his emails, and destroy the paper trail. No, to catch a thief of this magnitude, you didn't stop the theft, you let him complete it. You let him sign his name on the crime. She moved her cursor to the Approve button. It felt counterintuitive, like handing a loaded gun to her attacker, but she knew the laws of the Kensington Sovereign Fund better than anyone. The moment Silas used joint funds for a non-marital asset without disclosure, he violated the fiduciary duty clause of their prenuptial agreement. But more importantly, if he used this money to lie to the company, to Blackwood Aviation, it would trigger the misappropriation clause in the corporate bylaws. Take it, she whispered to the empty room. Take every cent, Silas. She clicked approve. The screen flashed green. Transaction successful. Silas Blackwood was now technically a thief. He thought he had just pulled off the perfect heist, completely unaware that his signature on that digital transfer was the first nail in his coffin. He had just sold his freedom for a brownstone he would never live in. 3 days later, the front door swung open with a dramatic thud. Silas breezed into the foyer, dropping a leather carry-on bag onto the marble floor with an exaggerated groan of exhaustion. "Home is the sailor, home from the sea," he announced, his voice thick with a fatigue that felt rehearsed. He slumped against the wall, loosening his tie. "Camilla, are you here? I feel like I've been living on an airplane for a week." Camilla walked down the grand staircase, her expression serene. She watched him play the part. He had rubbed his eyes to make them look red, and his suit was intentionally rumpled. He was selling the Dubai jet lag, with the commitment of a method actor. "Welcome back, darling," she said, descending the final steps. "You made excellent time. The flight from Dubai is 14 hours. Tailwinds," Silas said quickly, waving a dismissive hand. And the pilot pushed the engines. "I just wanted to get home to you." He walked over and gave her a kiss on the cheek. He smelled of expensive cologne, not the stale, recycled air of a long-haul flight. He smelled like a man who had just left a luxury apartment in the village. He reached into his bag and pulled out a small, gold-wrapped box. "I didn't have much time to shop, the schedule was insane, but I grabbed these at the Dubai duty-free. Your favorite truffles." Camilla took the box. It was heavy, expensive. She turned it over in her hands. The label was written in English and French. There was no Arabic text. No import stickers. These were bought at a boutique in Midtown, likely 20 minutes ago. "You're too thoughtful," she said, placing the box on the console table without opening it. "Did you close the deal?" "It's complicated," Silas sighed, walking past her toward the kitchen, expecting her to follow and serve him. "These things take time. But the $250,000 really helped grease the wheels. I think we're close. I just need to decompress. No questions about the house or the staff today, okay? My brain is fried." He was setting the boundaries, ensuring she wouldn't nag him while he recovered from his trip. He poured himself a scotch, not offering her one, and collapsed onto the living room sofa, putting his feet up on the coffee table. "I'll unpack for you," Camilla offered. "No," Silas barked, sitting up too quickly. He softened his tone instantly. "I mean, don't worry about it, babe. The maid can do it tomorrow. Let's just relax." "I insist," Camilla said, her voice gentle but firm. "You rest. I'll take care of the laundry." Before he could protest again, she grabbed the leather bag and headed for the laundry room. Silas was too comfortable, too arrogant to think she would actually go through his pockets. He thought she was just being the dutiful, subservient wife. Inside the laundry room, Camilla unzipped the bag. It was mostly empty, props for the show. A few shirts, a shaving kit. She reached into the inside pocket of his suit jacket, the one he had thrown over the bag. Her fingers brushed against a crumpled piece of paper. She pulled it out. It was a receipt. Not from a hotel in Dubai. Not from a frantic airport purchase. It was from Le Petit Bébé, a high-end infant boutique on Madison Avenue. Date: yesterday. Items: 1 cashmere romper, 1 silver rattle. Total: $450. Camilla stared at the receipt. He had bought gifts for the baby while he was supposedly closing a merger. She folded the receipt carefully and slipped it into her own pocket. Silas yelled from the other room, "Babe, where's the remote?" "Coming, darling," Camilla called back. She looked at her reflection in the laundry room mirror. The sad, confused wife was gone. In her place was the CEO she was born to be. Silas had come home thinking he was the king of the castle. He didn't know the locks had already been changed. 2 nights later, the Blackwood dining room was transformed into a theater of corporate arrogance. Silas had invited 3 of his top executives for a strategy dinner, though it was mostly an excuse to drink vintage wine and stroke his own ego. Camilla moved around the table like a ghost in her own home, refilling glasses of Cabernet while the men spoke over her as if she were part of the furniture. She wore a simple black dress, fading into the background, exactly as Silas liked. To him, she was a decorative accessory, necessary for the image of a stable CEO, but intellectually irrelevant. The key, Silas announced, swirling his glass and leaning back in his chair, is to inflate the valuation before the Q3 report. We push the green tech initiative. It doesn't actually have to work. It just has to look expensive on the brochures. The men laughed, a chorus of sycophants. But what about the oversight committee? One of the VPs asked nervously. If they audit the R&D spend, they'll see we're just moving money in circles. Let them look, Silas scoffed, reaching for a bread roll without even glancing at Camilla as she placed the basket near him. The oversight committee is toothless, and our biggest shareholder, the Kensington Sovereign Fund, they're a sleeping giant, a dinosaur. They haven't audited a portfolio company in 20 years. As long as the dividends check's clear, those old money bankers don't care if we burn the building down. Camilla's hand didn't tremble as she poured the wine, but her heart hammered a cold rhythm against her ribs. A sleeping giant, he called it. A dinosaur. He had no idea that the dinosaur was currently standing 6 inches from his left shoulder, topping off his glass with a $500 bottle of wine she had paid for. Camilla, darling. Silas snapped his fingers, not unkindly but dismissively. We're running low on the sparkling water. Be a dear and fetch another bottle from the cellar? And maybe check on dessert. The boys are getting hungry. Of course, Silas, she said softly, lowering her head in a gesture of submission. I wouldn't want to interrupt your important work. See? Silas grinned at his executives as she walked away. That's the secret to a happy marriage, gentlemen. Find a woman who knows her lane. Camilla is great with the flowers and the charities, but she wouldn't know a balance sheet from a grocery list. Laughter echoed down the hallway as Camilla entered the kitchen. She didn't go to the cellar. She pulled a small leather notebook from her apron pocket. She wrote down the date and the exact phrase Silas had used. It doesn't actually have to work. It just has to look expensive. She had just witnessed him confess to securities fraud. He wasn't just embezzling from her. He was planning to defraud the market. The Kensington Sovereign Fund didn't just care about dividends. They cared about integrity. And Silas had just admitted he had none. She grabbed a bottle of sparkling water and composed her face back into the mask of the dutiful wife. She would serve them dessert. She would let them eat cake. And while they gorged themselves on their own hubris, she would be preparing the slaughter. The next morning, Camilla didn't go to the garden club. She drove her nondescript sedan, the one she kept for errands, to a quiet art gallery in Chelsea. The gallery was closed to the public on Mondays, but Camilla had a key. It was one of the many properties held by the Kensington Trust. Waiting for her in the center of the empty showroom, surrounded by avant-garde sculptures, was a man who looked like a retired history professor. He wore a tweed jacket and wire-rimmed glasses. This was Mr. Sterling, the head of security for the Kensington family office. He wasn't a street-level PI. He was an intelligence gatherer who usually handled corporate espionage. Mrs. Blackwood, Sterling nodded, skipping the pleasantries. He handed her a thick manila envelope. We found everything. Camilla took the envelope to a marble bench and opened it. The photos were high definition and brutal in their clarity. Her name is Veronica Miller. Sterling recited from memory, his voice devoid of emotion. 26 years old. Former catalog model, currently unemployed, though she lists her occupation as lifestyle influencer. She met your husband 6 months ago at a charity gala you were unable to attend due to the flu. Camilla flipped through the photos. There was Silas entering the townhouse. Silas buying the baby stroller. Silas and Veronica arguing on a street corner, then kissing. And the child? Camilla asked, her finger tracing the face of the innocent baby boy in the picture. Biologically his, Sterling confirmed. We pulled a DNA sample from a discarded coffee cup Silas left at the park. 99.9% match. But there is a complication. Go on. Veronica is not exclusive, Sterling said. He pulled out a second stack of photos. These showed Veronica at a nightclub with a different man, younger, fitter, wearing a leather jacket. She is seeing a club promoter named Jax. Based on our surveillance, she is telling Silas she needs money for the baby's specialists, but she is actually funneling about 40% of that cash to Jax. Camilla let out a dry, humorless laugh. Silas was destroying his marriage and risking his career for a woman who was playing him for a fool. It was almost tragic, if it weren't so pathetic. "There is one more thing," Sterling said, his tone darkening. "We hacked into his private cloud server. We found a folder titled Project Flight." "Is it a new jet prototype?" Camilla asked. "No, ma'am," Sterling said. "It's a divorce strategy." He handed her a printed document. It was a timeline. Phase 1. Secure liquidity, the embezzlement. Phase 2. Hide assets offshore. Phase 3. File for divorce citing irreconcilable differences immediately after the Q3 bonus hits. Target date, November 15th. Camilla stared at the date. November 15th was 3 weeks away. Silas wasn't just having an affair. He was planning to blindside her, take his bonus, leave her with nothing but the house, and run off with Veronica. She closed the folder. The sadness was gone. The only thing left was the cold, hard resolve of a predator who had just realized the prey was trying to bite back. "He wants to leave on November 15th? Camilla stood up, smoothing her skirt. "That's unfortunate, because I plan to fire him on November 14th. To the world, Camilla Blackwood was a lucky woman who had married a rising star. To Silas, she was a comfortable safety net, a woman of moderate inheritance who enjoyed gardening and writing checks to animal shelters. They were both wrong. Camilla sat in her private study, a room Silas rarely entered because he found the antique books dusty. She unlocked the bottom drawer of her desk, not with a key, but with a biometric fingerprint scanner hidden under the lip of the wood. Inside was a secure satellite phone and a single, heavy binder embossed with the crest of a lion holding a key. The crest of the Kensington Sovereign Fund. The truth was a secret buried 3 generations deep. Her grandfather, Arthur Kensington, hadn't just built a bank. He had built an economic engine. When he died, he left the controlling interest not to a board of directors, but to his favorite granddaughter, whom he had trained in secret since she was 12. He knew Camilla had the mind for it, the patience, the ruthlessness masked by politeness. She wasn't just a beneficiary. She was the chairman of the board. Every loan Blackwood Aviation had received, every credit line that kept Silas's jets in the air, every bailout that had saved his ego during the last recession, it had all been signed off by the chairman. Silas thought the chairman was a reclusive old man living in Switzerland. He had never bothered to look at the signatures closely. If he had, he might have noticed the distinctive loop of the C in the initials. Camilla picked up the satellite phone and dialed a number that didn't exist in any public directory. It rang once. "Thorne speaking," a gravelly voice answered. "Eldon Thorne, the family's legendary attorney, a man who cost $2,000 an hour and was worth every penny." "It's Camilla," she said. "I need you to activate the morality protocol on the Blackwood Aviation Holdings." There was a pause on the line. Thorne knew what that meant. It was the nuclear option. Has he breached the covenant? "He has embezzled joint funds," Camilla recited, staring at the wall where her wedding photo hung. "He is engaging in securities fraud to inflate stock prices. And he is conspiring to hide assets in preparation for a divorce. He is a liability to the fund." "Understood," Thorne said, the sound of typing clicking in the background. "We can pull the credit lines immediately. The company will be insolvent by Friday. We can have him removed from the CEO chair by Monday morning." "No," Camilla interrupted. "That's too fast. He still thinks he's winning. If we strike now, he'll claim he's a victim of corporate maneuvering. He'll play the martyr." She looked down at the photo of Silas holding the baby in the park. "I don't just want him fired, Thorne. I want him exposed. The annual gala is in 2 weeks. He's planning to unveil his new legacy there. I want that to be the moment he realizes he doesn't have one. That is theatrical, Madam Chairman," Thorne noted, a hint of amusement in his voice. "But risky. If he secures the Q3 bonus before the gala, he gets $10 million in cash." "He won't," Camilla said coldly, "because I'm going to freeze the bonus pool, and I want you to prepare the asset seizure paperwork. When I take the company back, I want his personal account stripped to cover the debt he owes the fund. I want him to leave that stage with nothing but the tuxedo on his back." "And the mistress?" Thorne asked. "She is a co-conspirator in the embezzlement." "Leave her to me," Camilla said. I have a special surprise for Veronica. Just get the paperwork ready. I want the transfer of power to happen the second I give the signal. Consider it done, Thorne said. And Camilla? Yes. Your grandfather would be proud. You sound exactly like him. Camilla ended the call. She walked over to the wedding photo. Silas looked so dashing in it, his hand possessively on her waist. He looked like a man who owned the world. She reached out and tilted the frame slightly, so it hung crooked on the wall. You should have read the fine print, Silas, she whispered. She turned off the lights and left the room. The trap was set. Now, she just had to wait for the mouse to take the cheese. While Camilla was meeting with intelligence operatives, Silas was busy negotiating a different kind of deal in the sun-drenched living room of the townhouse he had secretly rented for Veronica. The air smelled of expensive lilies and the distinct, cloying perfume Veronica wore, a scent Silas found intoxicating, mostly because it was the opposite of Camilla's subtle, clean fragrance. Veronica was pacing the floor, the baby resting in a designer bassinet nearby. She wasn't happy. The Tokyo and Dubai lies were wearing thin, and she was tired of being the weekend option. I'm sick of this apartment, Silas, she complained, throwing a magazine onto the glass coffee table. It's too small, and the noise from the street wakes the baby. You promised us a real life. You promised us the Hamptons. Silas sighed, loosening his tie. He was exhausted from juggling two lives, but he knew he had to keep Veronica sweet. She was his escape, his trophy, the proof that he was still young and virile. Babe, be reasonable. The Hamptons estate is complicated. It's tied up in the family trust. I can't just move you in there until the divorce is finalized. Then finalize it. Veronica snapped, spinning around to face him. You said she was boring. You said she was basically a piece of furniture. Why is it taking so long to throw a chair out? Silas stood up and wrapped his arms around her, using the charm that had won over boardrooms and shareholders. It's happening, Veronica. The timeline is set. November 15th. Once the bonus hits my account, I file the papers. I'll kick her out, and we'll have the Hamptons house by Christmas. I promise. You'll be decorating the tree in the Great Hall. Veronica pouted, then melted into his embrace. You better not be lying to me, Silas. I don't want to be a secret forever. You won't be, Silas assured her, kissing her forehead. Camilla is clueless. She's too busy pruning her roses to notice I'm moving assets around. She doesn't even read the documents I put in front of her. Trust me, taking the house from her will be like taking candy from a baby. He laughed, a sound that vibrated with arrogance. He truly believed it. He saw Camilla as a relic of old money, soft, passive, and incapable of a fight. But as he held his mistress, imagining his future victory, he was blissfully unaware of the reality of the situation. He didn't know that the Hamptons estate wasn't tied up in a trust. It was owned outright by the Kensington Sovereign Fund. And he didn't know that the deed had a specific clause. Occupancy is restricted to direct descendants of Arthur Kensington. Silas wasn't a descendant. Camilla was. Even if he won the divorce, he couldn't live there. He couldn't even park his car in the driveway without Camilla's written permission. He was promising Veronica a castle that he was effectively trespassing in every time he visited. Just a few more weeks, Silas whispered into Veronica's hair. Then it's all ours. It better be, Veronica warned. Silas checked his watch. I have to go. Crisis meeting at the office. I have to go home and play the stressed-out CO so Camilla doesn't get suspicious. He left the townhouse, feeling like a master strategist. He had no idea that the crisis he was about to invent for Camilla would be the very trap that snapped his neck. Silas burst through the front door of the Blackwood estate at 6:30 p.m., his face a mask of calculated panic. He had rehearsed this scene in the car. He threw his briefcase onto the floor, loosened his tie until it hung askew, and ran a hand through his hair to make it stand up in frantic tufts. Camilla, he shouted, his voice cracking with feigned desperation. Camilla, I need you. Camilla appeared from the sunroom, holding a pair of gardening shears. She looked calm, the picture of domestic tranquility, which only fueled Silas's confidence that this scam would work. What is it, Silas? She asked, removing her gloves. What's wrong? It's the merger, Silas lied, pacing the foyer. The Regulatory Commission is freezing our operating accounts for a standard audit. It's nothing illegal, just bureaucratic red tape, but they've locked our liquidity. I can't make payroll on Friday. If the employees don't get paid, the stock tanks, the merger dies, and we lose everything. He stopped pacing and grabbed her shoulders, looking deep into her eyes. I need you to sign a temporary liquidity bridge. It just leverages the equity in the house for 48 hours until the accounts unlock. It's a formality, but the bank needs your signature because the deed is in both our names. It was a lie layered on a lie. There was no audit. There was no payroll freeze. Silas simply wanted to pull $2 million of equity out of the house to hide in an offshore account before he filed for divorce. He pulled a crumpled document from his jacket pocket. I need you to sign this. Now. The courier is waiting outside. Camilla took the document. Her eyes scanned the legal jargon. It was a home equity line of credit, HELOC, authorization. If she signed this, Silas would drain the house's value by morning. Oh, Silas, she said, her voice trembling with mock concern. This sounds terrible. Of course, I'll help. I don't want you to lose the company. Thank you. Thank you. Silas exhaled, uncapping a pen and thrusting it at her. Just sign here. And here. Camilla took the pen. It was a standard black ballpoint. She hovered it over the paper. She knew the banking laws in their state better than he did. For a HELOC on a primary residence to be valid without a notary present, the witnessing spouse had to sign in blue ink to distinguish the original from a photocopy in digital scans. It was an archaic rule, but the Kensington lawyers always enforced it strictly to prevent fraud. Furthermore, the document listed her as Camilla Blackwood, but the deed to the house, which was held by the trust, listed her legal owner name as Camilla Kensington, trustee. If she signed Camilla Blackwood in black ink, the bank's compliance algorithm would reject the document automatically. It would bounce. Silas wouldn't get a dime, but he would think he had the money until he tried to withdraw it. I'll do anything for you, Silas, she said softly. She pressed the black pen to the paper and signed Camilla Blackwood with a flourish. Done, she said, handing it back. Silas snatched the paper, checking the signature. He didn't notice the ink color. He didn't notice the name discrepancy. He just saw the dollar signs. You're the best wife a man could ask for, he said, kissing her cheek quickly, a kiss of betrayal. I have to run this to the bank. I'll be late tonight. Don't wait up. I won't, Camilla said. She watched him run out the door, clutching a worthless piece of paper. He was going to try to cash a check that reality couldn't clear. And when the bank rejected it tomorrow, he would be too busy panicking to realize she had sabotaged him. 5 days later, it was their 5th wedding anniversary. In the world of high society, the 5th anniversary is the wood anniversary, but usually, billionaires interpreted that as diamonds or luxury vacations. Silas interpreted it as an afterthought. They sat at the long mahogany dining table, separated by 6 feet of cold silence and a floral centerpiece Camilla had arranged herself. Silas was scrolling on his phone under the table, smiling at a text from Veronica. Happy anniversary, darling, Silas said, finally putting the phone down. He reached into his pocket and slid a small, flat box across the table. It wasn't wrapped. It was a generic box from the airport gift shop. Camilla opened it. Inside was a silk scarf. It was thin, garish, and patterned with generic tourist images of the Eiffel Tower. It still had the price tag sticker half peeled off the back, $49.99. I picked it up during my layover, Silas lied. It reminded me of, that trip we took. They had never been to Paris. It's lovely, Silas, Camilla said, touching the cheap fabric. Thank you. She knew exactly what he had bought Veronica for their 6-month anniversary yesterday. She had seen the credit card alert. A Cartier diamond tennis bracelet. Cost $12,000. He valued his mistress at $12,000 and his wife of 5 years at $50. The insult was so sharp it almost made her laugh. I have something for you, too, Camilla said. Silas looked up, wary. Oh, you didn't have to. It's not a physical gift, Camilla said, taking a sip of wine. Her eyes locked onto his, dark and unreadable. It's a promise. A promise. Silas chuckled nervously. Sounds serious. It is, she said. I promise that this year, you're going to get exactly what you deserve. Everything you've worked for, everything you've built, it's all going to come back to you. Silas smiled, hearing only what he wanted to hear. He thought she was wishing him success. He thought she was being the supportive, doting wife. That's sweet, babe, he said, checking his watch again. Here's to another 5 years. To the future, Camilla said, raising her glass. She drank to his destruction. Later that night, as Silas slept, snoring loudly, dreaming of his new life with Veronica, Camilla lay awake. She picked up her phone and opened the calendar app. November 14th, the date of the Blackwood Aviation Gala. She typed a note into the date entry, the reveal. She looked at the cheap scarf sitting on the nightstand. She would wear it to the gala. She would wear it as a symbol. And when she took the microphone to destroy him, she would make sure everyone knew exactly how much Silas Blackwood thought his wife was worth. He had given her a scarf. She was going to give him an eviction notice. The following Tuesday, Silas left the house early, claiming he had a breakfast meeting with the Federal Aviation Administration. He didn't. He was meeting a divorce attorney to finalize the strategy for hiding his assets. As soon as his Aston Martin roared down the driveway, Camilla transformed. She shed the pastel cardigans and floral dresses that Silas preferred, clothes that made her look soft and harmless. She dressed in a sharp, charcoal gray pantsuit, pulled her hair back into a severe chignon, and put on dark sunglasses. She drove past the garden center, past the grocery store, and into the heart of the financial district. She pulled into the underground garage of the Kensington Tower, a building Silas walked past every day but never looked at twice. The security guard at the private elevator didn't ask for her ID. He simply straightened his tie and bowed his head. "Good morning, Madam Chairman," he said. "Good morning, Roberts," she replied, stepping into the lift. When the doors opened on the top floor, the atmosphere was hushed and reverent. This was the nerve center of the Kensington Sovereign Fund. 12 men and women in expensive suits sat around a massive oval table. These were the titans of industry, people Silas begged for meetings with and was routinely denied. They all stood up when Camilla entered. "Please, sit," she commanded, taking the seat at the head of the table. "Let's review the Blackwood portfolio." The chief financial officer projected a series of charts onto the wall. They were a roadmap of Silas's corruption. "As you can see, Madam Chairman," the CFO said, pointing to a series of jagged red lines, "Mr. Blackwood has been aggressively moving liquidity from the R&D budget into consulting fees. He is essentially gutting the company's future to pay for his present lifestyle. If this continues for another quarter, Blackwood Aviation will be unable to fulfill its military contracts." Camilla studied the numbers. It was worse than she thought. Silas wasn't just stealing from her. He was stealing from the employees, the shareholders, and the clients. He was hollowing out the company like a termite, leaving only a shiny shell that would collapse the moment anyone leaned on it. "The board's recommendation," the CFO continued, "is immediate intervention. We call the loans today. We seize the assets. We file criminal charges." The room nodded in agreement. It was the logical business move. Stop the bleeding. Cut the cancer out. "No," Camilla said, her voice cutting through the room like a scalpel. The board members looked at her in surprise. "If we stop him now," Camilla explained, leaning forward, "he will spin the narrative. He will blame the greedy banks for stifling his innovation. He will claim he was just moving money around to save the company. He will walk away with a bruised ego but his reputation intact. He might even get a golden parachute." She tapped her finger on the table. "I don't want him to walk away. I want him to crawl." She looked at the projection of Silas's smiling face on the company website. Let him approve the Project Skyward initiative. Let him think he has secured the funding for his new jet. Let him climb all the way to the top of the mountain. Because the fall only kills you if you fall from a great height. But the cost. The CFO hesitated. "We could lose millions in the interim. I will cover the losses personally," Camilla said without hesitation. "Consider it an investment in justice. Keep the credit lines open until November 14th. Then, at the gala, when he thinks he is a god, we turn off the lights." The board members exchanged glances, a mixture of fear and admiration. They realized then that Camilla wasn't just protecting an investment. She was hunting. "Very well, Madam Chairman," the CFO said. "We hold until the gala." Camilla stood up. Meeting adjourned. She left the tower and drove back to the suburbs, changing back into her submissive wife costume in the car. When Silas came home that night, bragging about how he had outsmarted the FA, Camilla just smiled and poured his tea. She had seen the wolf in the woods, but he had no idea he was living with the hunter. The next piece of the puzzle arrived on a rainy Thursday afternoon. Mr. Sterling, the Kensington head of security, met Camilla in the greenhouse. The rain hammered against the glass roof, masking their conversation from any prying ears. "We have the results," Sterling said, handing her a sealed medical envelope. Camilla wiped the dirt from her hands and took the envelope. This was the variable that could change everything. The baby, the innocent child caught in the crossfire of Silas's ego. She opened the seal. Probability of paternity, 99.99%. So it's true. Camilla sighed, looking at the orchids she had been tending. Silas is the father. He has a son. A pang of genuine pain hit her. She and Silas had tried for years to have children. The doctors had said it was unexplained infertility. Silas had blamed her, making cruel jokes about her hostile environment. Now, looking at this paper, she realized the cruelty of the universe. He had given a child to a woman he had known for 6 months, while his wife of 5 years stood in an empty nursery. "That's not all, Mrs. Blackwood," Sterling said, his tone grim. "We dug deeper into the mother, Veronica Miller. We cloned her phone. And Silas isn't the only one she's lying to." Sterling pulled out a tablet and played a recording. It was a phone call between Veronica and a man named Jax. Veronica's voice. "He's such an idiot, Jax. He just bought me a Cartier bracelet. I'm going to pawn it tomorrow so we can pay off your gambling debt." Jax's voice. "Good girl. Keep milking the cash cow. Does he suspect anything?" Veronica's voice. "Please. He thinks he's a genius. He thinks I'm sitting at home knitting booties for the baby. He has no idea you stayed over last night." Camilla listened to the recording, her expression hardening. Silas was destroying his marriage, embezzling millions, and risking prison for a woman who called him a cash cow and pawned his gifts to fund her real boyfriend. It was the ultimate irony. The con artist was being conned. "Do you want us to leak this to Silas?" Sterling asked. "If he knows she's cheating, he might end the affair. It could save the marriage." Camilla looked at the rain sliding down the glass. Save the marriage? There was nothing left to save. Silas had made his choice. If she told him now, he would be heartbroken, yes. He might even beg for forgiveness. But he wouldn't be punished. He would just be a victim of a bad woman. "No," Camilla said softly. "Do not tell him." Sterling looked surprised. "Ma'am? He is being played." "I know," Camilla said. "And he deserves it. If I tell him now, he gets to be the tragic hero. He gets to say, 'Oh, that evil woman tricked me.' No, I want him to lose everything for her. I want him to burn his life down for a lie. Only then, when he is standing in the ashes, will I let him know that she never loved him either." She handed the tablet back to Sterling. "Let him keep thinking he's winning. Let him buy her the world. The receipt is coming due soon enough." "Understood," Sterling said. "We also found out she is pressuring him for a vacation. She wants to go to Paris." "Paris," Camilla mused. "Silas hates Paris. He says the food is overrated." "He just booked tickets," Sterling revealed. "First class. Departing this Friday." He told his secretary to clear his schedule for a leadership retreat. Camilla picked up her pruning shears. The metal felt cold and heavy in her hand. "A leadership retreat," she repeated. "Well, it would be a shame if he didn't have any supervision. Book me a ticket, Sterling, and get me a room in the same hotel." "The same hotel?" Sterling raised an eyebrow. "That's dangerous close." "I want to be close," Camilla said, snipping the head off a dead rose. "I want to hear him lie to her, just like he lies to me." "I have to go to a leadership retreat in upstate New York," Silas announced on Thursday night, packing his bag with a brooding seriousness. "No phones, no internet. Just me and the other industry leaders in a cabin, hammering out the future of aviation." "It sounds rugged," Camilla said, watching him pack a silk tuxedo shirt and a bottle of expensive cologne. "Will you be chopping wood?" "Metaphorically," Silas muttered, zipping the bag. "Look, I'll be off the grid until Monday. Don't worry if you don't hear from me. It's a total immersion exercise." "I understand," Camilla said. "Immersion is important." 10 hours later, Silas was not in a cabin in upstate New York. He was checking into the Le Grand Hotel in Paris, France. He was wearing oversized sunglasses and a hat, looking ridiculous, like a celebrity trying too hard to be incognito. Veronica was hanging off his arm, complaining about the turbulence. "Stop whining, babe," Silas hissed as they crossed the opulent lobby. "We made it. We have the royal suite. Just you, me, and the city of lights." They entered the elevator. As the doors closed, Silas didn't notice the woman sitting in the lobby armchair, hidden behind a French newspaper. Camilla lowered the paper. She was wearing a blonde wig and a trench coat. She waited for the elevator dial to stop. Penthouse floor. She walked to the reception desk. Bonjour, she said in flawless French, a skill Silas didn't know she had. I believe my husband, Mr. Blackwood, just checked in. I am part of his security detail. I need the room adjacent to the royal suite. The one with the connecting door. The concierge hesitated. Madam, that room is currently under maintenance. Camilla slid a black Amex card across the marble counter, the Kensington black card that had no limit. I don't mind the dust. I just need to be close to the asset. 5 minutes later, Camilla was standing in room 502. It shared a wall with the royal suite. There was a connecting door, locked from both sides, but the seal was old and the wood was thin. She pressed a small, medical-grade stethoscope against the door panel, a tool Sterling had given her. The sounds came through clearly. Wow, Silas, look at this view. Veronica squealed. You can see the Eiffel Tower. I bought this view for you, babe. Silas's voice boomed, full of pride. This is the life you deserve, not that cramped townhouse. And what about her? Veronica asked, her voice dropping. Did she suspect anything? Camilla. Silas laughed, the sound vibrating through the door and straight into Camilla's chest. Please. She thinks I'm in a log cabin eating beans. She actually packed me a bag of trail mix. Can you believe that? She's so simple. Camilla stood alone in the dark room, the stethoscope pressed to her ear. Simple. That was the word he used. Not kind. Not loyal. Simple. I feel kind of bad for her, Veronica giggled. Does she know you're going to divorce her next month? She'll be fine, Silas said dismissively. She has her garden. She'll find some nice, boring accountant to marry. But us? We're going to rule the world. I'm going to take Blackwood Aviation public, dump the old investors, and we'll be billionaires, Veronica. Real billionaires. Camilla pulled the stethoscope away. Her hands were shaking, not from sadness, but from rage. He wasn't just planning to leave her. He was planning to dump the old investors. He was planning to dump the Kensington Sovereign Fund. He was planning to bite the hand that fed him. She walked to the room service menu. She picked up the phone. Oui, madam, the operator answered. I'd like to send a bottle of wine to the royal suite, Camilla said, her voice icy calm. The house read, the cheapest one you have, and include a note. What should the note say, madam? Right, enjoy the simple things. They last longer than you think. She hung up. Next door, she heard the cork pop on a bottle of champagne. They were celebrating their victory. They didn't know that this simple wife was 10 feet away, and she had just decided that they wouldn't be leaving Paris with a victory. They would be leaving with a curse. Room service at Le Grand Hotel was known for its discretion, but even the waiter raised an eyebrow at the order. A bottle of vin de table, the kind usually sold in plastic jugs at convenience stores, delivered to the royal suite on a silver platter. Inside room 502, Camilla pressed the stethoscope against the connecting door, holding her breath. She heard the waiter knock next door. She heard Silas's booming voice call out, Intres. Compliments of a secret admirer, monsieur. The waiter's muffled voice came through the wall. A secret admirer? Veronica giggled. Is it from the hotel manager? They know you're a VIP. There was the sound of a bottle being uncorked, followed by a confused silence. What is this swill? Silas's voice dropped, losing its jovial edge. This is vinegar. Why would they send this? Read the note. Silas, Veronica urged. Camilla closed her eyes, visualizing the moment. Silas picking up the heavy cream cardstock. His eyes scanning the handwritten message. Enjoy the simple things. They last longer than you think. What does that mean? Veronica asked, her voice tight with sudden anxiety. That sounds creepy, Silas. Is someone watching us? There was a long pause. Camilla could almost hear the gears turning in Silas's mind. Was it a journalist? A business rival? Or, the thought terrified him for a brief second. Was it Camilla? No. Silas exhaled, the sound of his arrogance returning like a shield. It's probably just a bad translation. Or a prank from one of the guys at the firm. They knew I was coming here. It's a joke. Simple things. They're making fun of me for staying at a historic hotel instead of a modern glass tower. Are you sure? Veronica pressed. It feels personal. Relax, babe, Silas said, the clinking of glass following his words. I run a billion-dollar company. I have enemies. If someone wanted to hurt me, they wouldn't send bad wine. They'd send a subpoena. He laughed at his own joke. He poured the cheap wine into the crystal glasses. To us, and to the simple people who wish they were us. Through the stethoscope, Camilla listened to the clink of the toast. He had dismissed the warning. He had rationalized the threat because his ego wouldn't allow him to believe that he was vulnerable. He drank the wine she had sent, a symbol of the poverty he was about to inherit, and he didn't even taste the irony. Then, the mood in the next room shifted. The conversation died down, replaced by the sounds of intimacy. Camilla didn't pull away. She forced herself to listen to the murmurs, the rustling of sheets, the betrayal happening 5 feet away from her. She needed to burn this sound into her memory. Every giggle from Veronica, every whisper from Silas, was fuel for the fire she was building. She sat on the floor of the dark hotel room, alone, while her husband made love to another woman on the other side of the wall. Tears streamed down her face, silent and hot, but her expression remained stone cold. "Enjoy it, Silas," she whispered to the empty room. "It's the last peaceful night you'll ever have." The leadership retreat ended on Monday. Silas returned to New York tanned, relaxed, and oblivious, claiming the mountain air had cleared his head. In reality, the trip had only deepened his financial hole. The royal suite, the first-class flights, the shopping spree on the Champs-Élysées. He had burned through another $100,000. He needed a refill, and fast. On Wednesday morning, Silas sat in his office at Blackwood Aviation, the skyline of Manhattan stretching out behind him. He logged into the corporate mainframe. His fingers flew across the keyboard, bypassing the operational budgets which were currently under review by the auditors. He needed a source of cash that nobody watched closely. He found it, the Employee Pension Liquidity Fund. It was a massive pool of money, over $50 million, set aside for the retirement of the mechanics, engineers, and pilots who kept his planes in the air. It was sacred ground. To touch it was not just a violation of trust. It was a federal crime under the ERISA Act. But Silas didn't see people. He saw numbers. "I'll pay it back," he muttered to himself, the mantra of every white-collar criminal in history. "Once the merger goes through, I'll put it back with interest. No harm, no foul." He initiated a transfer of $5 million. He routed it through a complex web, first to a vendor in the Cayman Islands, then to a shell company in Delaware, and finally to his personal offshore account in the Seychelles. He hit enter. Processing. 3 miles away, in the Kensington Tower, a red light flashed on a monitor in the Security Operations Center. "Madam Chairman," the head of IT called out. "He's doing it. He's hitting the pension fund. 5 million. Camilla stood behind the technician, watching the code scroll across the screen. This was the moment of no return. If he stole from the company, he could be fired. But if he stole from the pensioners, he could be imprisoned. "Do we block it?" the technician asked, his finger hovering over the kill switch. "We can freeze the transfer before it leaves the building." Camilla watched the progress bar, 40%, 50%. If she stopped him now, she saves the money, but Silas walks free. He would claim it was a clerical error, a glitch. He would fire the CFO and play the victim. He would survive to hurt someone else. "No," Camilla said, her voice devoid of mercy. "Let it go through." "Ma'am." The technician turned to look at her. "That's $5 million of the employee's money. The Kensington Fund insures the pension," Camilla stated. "We will reimburse the employees out of my own pocket if we have to. But for the trap to work, the crime must be completed. He has to hold the smoking gun. 80%, 90%. Silas, in his office, took a sip of espresso, watching the bar load. He felt a rush of adrenaline. He was smarter than the system. He was a god. Transaction complete. Silas smiled, leaning back in his chair. He was safe. He had the money to pay off Veronica's debts, buy the silence he needed, and finalize the divorce. In the Kensington Tower, Camilla leaned forward. "Capture the log," she ordered. "Print the audit trail. Timestamp it. And flag it for the FBI Cybercrimes Division." "When do we send it to the FBI?" the technician asked. "Not yet," Camilla said, turning to leave the room. "The FBI is the encore. I want to handle the main performance myself." Silas thought he had just secured his future. He didn't realize he had just signed a confession that carried a mandatory minimum sentence of 10 years in federal prison. The trap wasn't just shut, it was welded tight. The Future of Flight Gala was the most anticipated event of the social season. It was Silas's coronation. He had spent months curating the guest list, ensuring that every senator, investor, and media mogul would be there to witness him unveil the new Blackwood jet. 2 days before the event, Silas walked into the master bedroom where Camilla was reading. He looked her up and down with a critical eye. "Camilla," he started, his tone patronizing. "About the gala on Saturday." "Yes." She didn't look up from her book. "I've been thinking. It's going to be a very technical night. Lots of engineering talk, aerodynamics, stock split discussions. It's going to be incredibly boring for you." "I don't mind," she said calmly. "I enjoy seeing you work." "Right, but—" Silas scratched the back of his neck, feigning concern. "Honestly, babe, you look tired lately. The gardening, the house. Maybe you should sit this one out? Stay home, order in, have a spa night. You deserve a break." He didn't want her there. He wanted Veronica there. He had already arranged for Veronica to attend as a special consultant, giving him an excuse to have her on his arm all night while his wife stayed home, invisible. "Silas." Camilla closed her book and stood up. "I am the wife of the CEO. If I don't attend, the rumors will start. People will say the marriage is in trouble. Do you want that distraction right before the merger?" She used his own fear against him. He couldn't risk bad press now. "Fine." Silas gritted his teeth. "You can come. But keep a low profile, okay? Wear something muted. Beige. Wear that gray dress. I don't want you distracting the investors. I need to be the focal point." "I understand," Camilla said, lowering her eyes. "Muted. I'll be a shadow." "Good girl." Silas patted her shoulder. "I have to go to the tailor for my final fitting. I'll see you at dinner." As soon as he left, Camilla walked into her massive walk-in closet. She pushed past the racks of beige, gray, and pastel clothes, the wardrobe of the submissive wife Silas had molded her into. She reached the back of the closet, where a garment bag stamped with the Kensington crest hung alone. She unzipped it. Inside was not a beige dress. It was a gown of deep, blood-red silk. It was structured, sharp, and regal. It was a dress designed for war. It was the Kensington Red, a shade her grandmother had worn when she hostile took over a rival bank in the 1980s. It was a dress that didn't just ask for attention, it commanded submission. Along with the dress, she pulled out a box from the safe. Inside was the Kensington Emerald Necklace, a piece of jewelry worth more than Blackwood Aviation's entire Q3 profit. Silas wanted her to be a shadow. She would be the sun that burned him blind. She ran her hand over the silk. He had invited his mistress to be the star. He had invited the media to broadcast his triumph. He had set the stage perfectly. "You want a focal point, Silas?" she whispered, a dangerous smile playing on her lips. "I'll give you a focal point." The preparation was complete. The evidence was gathered. The trap was set. All that was left was to walk onto the stage and drop the blade. The day before the gala, the psychological warfare in the Blackwood household reached its peak. Silas wasn't content with just cheating on his wife. He needed to diminish her. He needed to ensure that when they stood side by side on the red carpet, she looked like the past, and Veronica, who would be arriving separately, looked like the future. He walked into the living room holding a garment bag from a mid-tier department store. He laid it on the sofa with a feigned casualness. "Babe," he called out, "I picked up something for you to wear tomorrow, since you said you didn't have anything appropriate." Camilla walked in, drying her hands on a towel. She had a closet full of couture, but Silas had slowly convinced her over the years that she had tacky taste and needed his guidance. She unzipped the bag. Inside was a dress that could only be described as aggressive beige. It was a shapeless, high-necked sack made of stiff chiffon. It looked like something a strict librarian would wear to a funeral in 1995. It was intentionally unflattering, designed to erase her figure and age her by 10 years. "It's demure," Silas said, watching her face closely. "I think it suits you. It says dignified wife. We don't want you looking like you're trying too hard, right?" He was manipulating her insecurities. He wanted her to fade into the background so that his special consultant, Veronica, who he knew would be wearing a backless gold sequins gown, would shine brighter. Camilla touched the rough fabric. A younger version of herself might have cried. She might have argued. But the woman standing there today simply smiled, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You're so thoughtful, Silas," she said softly. "You always know exactly how I should look." "Great." Silas clapped his hands, relieved. "Wear that. Put your hair up in a bun. Minimal makeup. Let's keep it low-key. The press is there for the jet, not for a fashion show." Of course, Camilla agreed. I wouldn't dream of stealing your spotlight. She took the ugly beige dress upstairs. She didn't throw it away. She hung it on the door of the wardrobe, a decoy. Silas thought he had won. He thought he had successfully neutralized his wife. He had no idea that behind the closed door of the walk-in closet, the Kensington red gown was already steamed and waiting. He wanted her to look like a dignified wife. Fine. She would show him exactly what a Kensington wife looked like. She wouldn't look like a librarian. She would look like an empress coming to sign a death warrant. Later that afternoon, Silas left for a final sight check at the venue. Camilla watched him go. He was meticulous about the lighting, the sound, the stage placement. He was obsessing over every detail of the gala, ensuring it was perfect. It was almost tragic. He was building the perfect stage for his own execution. He was polishing the guillotine, thinking it was a throne. With Silas gone, the house was quiet. Camilla was in the front garden, kneeling in the dirt, pruning the hydrangea bushes near the main gate. She wore an old sun hat and gardening gloves, her face obscured. A black SUV with tinted windows pulled up to the curb. It wasn't Silas's car. It was a luxury rideshare. The back door opened, and a woman stepped out. It was Veronica. Seeing her in photos was one thing. Seeing her in the flesh was another. She was undeniably beautiful, young, tall, with the kind of polished, high-maintenance look that screamed new money. She wore oversized sunglasses and carried a designer handbag that Camilla knew Silas had paid for with the emergency liquidity fund. Veronica scanned the property, looking unimpressed. She spotted Camilla kneeling in the dirt. She didn't see the lady of the house. She saw a woman in dirty clothes. "Hey, you," Veronica called out, snapping her fingers. Camilla froze. She slowly stood up, brushing the soil from her knees, but kept her head tilted down under the hat. "Are you the housekeeping staff? Or the gardener?" Veronica asked, walking up to the gate, but not crossing the threshold. Her tone was dismissive, the way one speaks to a servant they deem beneath them. "I take care of the grounds," Camilla said, her voice low and raspy. It wasn't a lie. She owned the grounds. "Great," Veronica said, pulling a small, sealed envelope from her bag. "I need you to give this to Mr. Blackwood, and only Mr. Blackwood. Do not give it to his wife. Do you understand?" Camilla walked to the gate. She looked at the envelope. It was marked urgent. "Mr. Blackwood is very busy," Camilla said. "Is it important?" "It's life-changing," Veronica smirked, adjusting her sunglasses. "Just tell him Veronica stopped by, and tell him the timeline just sped up." She shoved the envelope through the iron bars into Camilla's hand. "And hey," Veronica added, looking at the hydrangeas, "you should really trim those back. When I move in here next month, I'm going to rip all this out. I want a Zen garden. This old English style is so depressing." Camilla gripped the envelope tight. "I'll be sure to pass that on, Mississippi." "Good." Veronica turned on her heel, got back into the SUV, and sped away. Camilla stood alone at the gate. The audacity was breathtaking. The mistress had just given the wife instructions on how to decorate the garden she planned to steal. Camilla walked back into the house, into the privacy of the kitchen. She slit the envelope open with a knife. She expected a love letter, or perhaps a demand for more money. It was neither. It was a medical result. A lab report from a fertility clinic. Patient, Veronica Miller. Result, positive. Gestational age, 6 weeks. Camilla stared at the paper. Veronica was pregnant again. But the date? Camilla did the math. 6 weeks ago, Silas was in Dubai at the park. But according to the audio recordings from Mr. Sterling, Veronica had also been with her boyfriend, Jax, that same week. This baby might be Silas's. Or it might be Jax's. Veronica didn't care. She was using it as leverage to force Silas to speed up the divorce. That's what she meant by the timeline just sped up. Camilla placed the document on the counter. This changed nothing, and it changed everything. Silas was trapped. He was being hunted by a woman who saw him as a paycheck, and he was being judged by a wife who saw him as a liability. "You want a Zen garden?" Camilla whispered, lighting a match and burning the envelope in the sink. "I'll give you scorched earth." The night before the gala, the air in the house was thick with unspoken tension. Silas was in the master bathroom, standing before the mirror, practicing his speech. The door was ajar. Camilla stood in the darkened hallway, watching him. "We stand on the precipice of a new era," Silas recited to his reflection, making a sweeping gesture with his hand. Blackwood Aviation isn't just a company. It's a family. And like any family, we value loyalty, integrity, and truth. He paused, checking his smile in the mirror. He adjusted it, making it look more sincere. Loyalty, integrity, truth, he repeated. The hypocrisy was so potent, it was almost suffocating. This was a man who had embezzled the pension fund, cheated on his wife, and was currently planning to serve her divorce papers in 3 days. And yet, he looked at himself in the mirror and saw a hero. Camilla walked into the bathroom. Silas jumped, startled. "Jesus, Camilla," he snapped. "Don't sneak up on me. I'm in the zone." "I apologize," she said, leaning against the doorframe. "You sounded convincing." "Convincing? It's the truth," Silas said, straightening his tie. "This merger is going to change the world, and it's going to make us very, very rich." He turned to her, his eyes gleaming with greed. "You know, once this bonus hits, we should take a trip. Maybe go back to that place in Italy you like. Just the two of us." He was lying again. There would be no trip to Italy. By the time the bonus hit, he planned to be in the Hamptons with Veronica. He was stringing her along until the very last second. Camilla looked at him, giving him one final chance. One microscopic window to confess. To show a shred of humanity. "Silas," she said quietly, "is there anything you want to tell me? Before tomorrow?" Silas froze for a fraction of a second. His eyes flickered to his phone on the counter, where Veronica had been texting him about the pregnancy test. For a moment, she saw the panic behind his mask. Then, the mask slid back into place. He laughed, a hollow, patronizing sound. "Secrets? You've been reading too many mystery novels, babe. I'm an open book. My only secret is how much I love you." He walked over and kissed her on the forehead. It felt like a brand. "Now, go get some sleep," he said. "You have a big day of standing around and looking beige tomorrow." "Yes," Camilla said. "A big day." She left the bathroom. She didn't go to sleep. She went to her study. She unlocked the safe. Inside were the documents she would need for tomorrow. The photos from the park. The bank transfer logs of the embezzlement. The audio recording of Veronica admitting she was using him. The paternity test. And finally, the shareholder resolution to remove CEO, already signed by the chairman of the Kensington Sovereign Fund. She placed them all into a sleek, black leather portfolio. Silas had his speech about integrity. She had her portfolio of truth. She turned off the lamp and sat in the dark, watching the moonlight hit the floor. He had chosen his path. He had rejected every off-ramp, every chance to come clean. He had doubled down on the lie at every turn. "Sleep well, Silas," she whispered. "It's your last night as a free man." The Future of Flight Gala was not just a party. It was a coronation, held in the massive, glass-walled atrium of the City Aviation Museum. The venue was designed to intimidate. A prototype of the new Blackwood supersonic jet hung suspended from the ceiling, bathed in blue spotlights, looking like a predator mid-strike. Beneath it, tables draped in silver linens were set for 300 of the city's most powerful people. Silas Blackwood stood at the entrance, a flute of vintage champagne in his hand, greeting senators, tech moguls, and defense contractors. He looked every inch the titan of industry. His tuxedo was bespoke, his smile was dazzling, and his confidence was absolute. He checked his phone surreptitiously. The text from Veronica read, "I'm inside. Row 2. Gold dress. Don't look at me too much, winky face." He scanned the room. There she was. Veronica looked stunning in a backless gold sequin gown that hugged every curve. She was laughing with a group of young investors, playing the role of the social media consultant perfectly. Silas felt a surge of pride. That was the woman who matched his ambition. That was the future Mrs. Blackwood. He checked his watch. 7:45 p.m. Camilla was late. He frowned. He had specifically told her to arrive early so he could shuffle her to a back table before the press arrived. He imagined her in that shapeless beige sack he had bought her, looking frumpy and out of place. He wanted her to be invisible, a dull background note to his symphony. "Where is your lovely wife, Silas?" Senator Davies asked, clapping him on the shoulder. "I was hoping to ask her about the Kensington charity ball." "She's on her way, Senator," Silas lied smoothly. "She's not really one for the spotlight. You know Camilla. Very domestic." At that exact moment, the heavy double doors at the top of the grand staircase swung open. The room didn't just go quiet. The silence hit like a physical force. The ambient chatter died. The string quartet seemed to falter. 300 heads turned upward. Silas followed their gaze, expecting to see his gray little mouse. Instead, he saw a queen. Camilla stood at the top of the stairs, bathed in the white light of the paparazzi flashbulbs that immediately erupted like a lightning storm. She was not wearing beige. She was wearing red, a deep, blood-red silk gown that was structured like armor, with a plunging neckline and a train that pooled around her feet like liquid fire. It was the Kensington Red, a color that signaled war in the banking world. Around her neck hung the Kensington Emeralds, a necklace so large and heavy it looked less like jewelry and more like a badge of office. She didn't look down. She didn't look nervous. She looked down at them. "My God," the senator whispered. "She looks magnificent." Silas felt the blood drain from his face. This wasn't the script. She was supposed to be the background. Instead, she was eclipsing the sun. The press abandoned Silas instantly, swarming the base of the stairs as Camilla began her descent. She moved with a slow, predatory grace, her heels clicking a rhythm that echoed through the hall. Silas shoved his way through the crowd, meeting her at the bottom of the stairs before she could reach the microphones. He grabbed her arm, his grip bruisingly tight, his smile fixed for the cameras, but his eyes screaming murder. "What do you think you're doing?" he hissed through his teeth. "I told you to wear the beige. You look like you're trying to outshine the plane." Camilla looked at his hand on her arm, then up at his eyes. Her expression was unreadable, cold as the emeralds at her throat. "The beige didn't fit, Silas. And I thought this was a night for transparency." "You're making a scene," Silas whispered furiously. "Go to table 12. Sit down. Don't speak to the press. Do not embarrass me." "I wouldn't dream of embarrassing you, Silas," she said, her voice smooth and dangerous. "You do that so well yourself." "Go home," he commanded, his panic rising. "Claim a headache. Leave. Now." Camilla gently peeled his fingers off her arm. She leaned in close, so her lips brushed his ear. The photographers went wild, thinking it was a romantic whisper. "I can't go home, darling," she whispered. "The show hasn't even started." She stepped past him, the red train of her dress brushing against his legs, leaving him standing there confused and terrified. He watched her walk into the crowd, where she was immediately surrounded by the board members of the Kensington Sovereign Fund. They weren't ignoring her. They were bowing to her. Silas swallowed hard. For the first time in 5 years, he felt a flicker of true fear. He had invited a sheep to the slaughter, but a lion had walked through the door. The lights in the atrium dimmed, plunging the room into a dramatic twilight. A spotlight snapped onto the center stage, illuminating Silas Blackwood. The applause was polite, dutiful. Silas adjusted his microphone, his hands trembling slightly, though he hid it well. He had spent the last hour dodging Camilla, who had been holding court with his biggest investors, laughing and whispering things he couldn't hear. But now he was on stage. This was his domain. He took a deep breath, inhaling the adoration he believed he deserved. "Ladies and gentlemen," Silas began, his voice booming through the surround sound. "Distinguished guests, tonight, we don't just celebrate a machine. We celebrate a vision." He gestured to the jet hanging above them. "The Blackwood X, one isn't just metal and fuel. It is the culmination of risk. It is the proof that when you dare to defy the laws of gravity, you can soar." The crowd clapped. Silas's confidence returned. He was winning them back. He looked down at the front row. There, in the center seat, sat Camilla. She was perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap, the red dress glowing in the ambient light. She was watching him with the intensity of a sniper waiting for a clear shot. Silas decided to pivot. He needed to humanize himself, to charm the room. He needed to make Camilla look small again. "Of course," Silas chuckled, putting on his aw shucks persona. "Building an empire takes sacrifice. It means late nights. It means missed anniversaries. It means long trips to Dubai and Paris." He paused for effect. He saw Veronica in the second row, blowing him a subtle kiss. He grinned. "And behind every great man," Silas continued, looking directly at Camilla, "is a woman who, well, who keeps the home fires burning. My wife, Camilla, is here tonight." The spotlight swung to Camilla. She didn't smile. She didn't wave. She just stared. "Camilla isn't much for the technical stuff," Silas joked, a cruel smirk playing on his lips. "I tried to explain aerodynamics to her once, and she asked if that was a type of yoga." A ripple of nervous laughter went through the room. It was a cheap shot, designed to paint her as the dim-witted trophy wife. But seriously, Silas continued, I want to thank her for her patience. While I was out conquering the world, securing contracts, and building the future, she was at home, probably baking cookies or gardening, doing the things that simple people do to stay happy. The insult hung in the air. Simple people. Silas felt a rush of power. He had put her in her place publicly. Now, he would pivot to Veronica. And I also want to thank my special consultant, Ms. Veronica Miller, Silas said, gesturing to the second row, whose brilliant insights into modern branding helped us reach a new generation. Veronica, stand up. Veronica stood, beaming, waving to the crowd like she had just won a pageant. The mistress was standing. The wife was sitting. The humiliation was complete. So, Silas raised his glass, preparing for the toast. To the future, to Blackwood Aviation, and to the bold choices we make. He brought the glass to his lips, but he never took a sip. In the front row, Camilla Blackwood stood up. She didn't stand up quickly or angrily. She rose with a slow, terrifying deliberation. The red silk rustled in the silence. Silas froze. Camilla? Darling, please sit down. The speech isn't over. Camilla ignored him. She walked toward the stairs of the stage. Security? Silas said into the microphone, his voice wavering. Could someone escort my wife back to her seat? She's feeling unwell. Two large security guards in black suits stepped out from the shadows. Silas breathed a sigh of relief. They would drag her out. He would spin it as a medical episode. But the guards didn't move toward Camilla. They moved toward the stage. They took positions at the base of the stairs, crossing their arms, blocking anyone else from approaching. They turned their backs to Camilla, facing the crowd. They were protecting her. Silas stared at them. He recognized one of the guards. It was Mr. Sterling, the man Silas thought was just the Kensington family driver. Camilla walked up the stairs. The sound of her heels on the metal steps was amplified by the acoustics of the hangar. Click, click, click. She reached the podium. She stood next to Silas, who looked like a child who had just realized the monster under the bed was real. She didn't look at him. She reached out and took the microphone from his hand. He was too stunned to resist. She turned to the crowd of 300 shocked faces. She adjusted the stand. You're right, Silas, she said, her voice amplified, crystal clear and steady. I wasn't baking cookies. She paused, letting the silence stretch until it was painful. I was auditing the books. The phrase hung in the air like smoke. I was auditing the books. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The senator dropped his fork. The press, sensing blood in the water, zoomed their lenses in. Silas stood frozen next to her, his hand still shaped as if he were holding the microphone that was no longer there. Auditing. Silas finally sputtered, his voice cracking without amplification, audible only to the front rows. Camilla, you're drunk. Get off the stage. He reached for her arm, trying to physically steer her away from the podium. She's having a breakdown, he shouted to the crowd, forcing a panicked laugh. Too much champagne. I'm so sorry, everyone. But before his hand could touch her, the head of security, Mr. Sterling, stepped onto the stage from the wings. He didn't grab Camilla. He stepped between them, placing a massive hand on Silas's chest, pushing him back 3 feet. Do not touch the chairman, Sterling said, his voice low and menacing. The what? Silas blinked, looking from Sterling to Camilla. She's not the chairman. She's my wife. She's a gardener. Camilla ignored his outburst. She reached into the podium, where Silas had hidden his notes, and pulled out a sleek, black remote control. It wasn't the clicker for his PowerPoint presentation. It was a master override for the venue's AV system. She looked at the audience. Her gaze was cool, clinical. She wasn't a scorned woman screaming at a cheating husband. She was a CEO addressing a shareholder meeting. Silas just told you that building an empire requires sacrifice, Camilla said into the mic. He told you it requires integrity. He told you about his long trips to Dubai and Paris to secure the future of this company. She pressed the button on the remote. The crowd clapped. Silas's confidence returned. He was winning them back. He looked down at the front row. There, in the center seat, sat Camilla. She was perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap, the red dress glowing in the ambient light. She was watching him with the intensity of a sniper waiting for a clear shot. Silas decided to pivot. He needed to humanize himself, to charm the room. He needed to make Camilla look small again. Of course, Silas chuckled, putting on his "aw shucks" persona. Building an empire takes sacrifice. It means late nights. It means missed anniversaries. It means long trips to Dubai and Paris. He paused for effect. He saw Veronica in the second row, blowing him a subtle kiss. He grinned. And behind every great man, Silas continued, looking directly at Camilla, is a woman who keeps the home fires burning. My wife, Camilla, is here tonight. The spotlight swung to Camilla. She didn't smile. She didn't wave. She just stared. Camilla isn't much for the technical stuff, Silas joked, a cruel smirk playing on his lips. I tried to explain aerodynamics to her once, and she asked if that was a type of yoga. A ripple of nervous laughter went through the room. It was a cheap shot, designed to paint her as the dim-witted trophy wife. But seriously, Silas continued, I want to thank her for her patience. While I was out conquering the world, securing contracts, and building the future, she was at home, probably baking cookies or gardening, doing the things that simple people do to stay happy. The insult hung in the air. Simple people. Silas felt a rush of power. He had put her in her place publicly. Now, he would pivot to Veronica. And I also want to thank my special consultant, Ms. Veronica Miller, Silas said, gesturing to the second row, whose brilliant insights into modern branding helped us reach a new generation. Veronica, stand up. Veronica stood, beaming, waving to the crowd like she had just won a pageant. The mistress was standing. The wife was sitting. The humiliation was complete. So, Silas raised his glass, preparing for the toast. To the future, to Blackwood Aviation, and to the bold choices we make. He brought the glass to his lips, but he never took a sip. In the front row, Camilla Blackwood stood up. She didn't stand up quickly or angrily. She rose with a slow, terrifying deliberation. The red silk rustled in the silence. Silas froze. Camilla? Darling, please sit down. The speech isn't over. Camilla ignored him. She walked toward the stairs of the stage. Security? Silas said into the microphone, his voice wavering. Could someone escort my wife back to her seat? She's feeling unwell. Two large security guards in black suits stepped out from the shadows. Silas breathed a sigh of relief. They would drag her out. He would spin it as a medical episode. But the guards didn't move toward Camilla. They moved toward the stage. They took positions at the base of the stairs, crossing their arms, blocking anyone else from approaching. They turned their backs to Camilla, facing the crowd. They were protecting her. Silas stared at them. He recognized one of the guards. It was Mr. Sterling, the man Silas thought was just the Kensington family driver. Camilla walked up the stairs. The sound of her heels on the metal steps was amplified by the acoustics of the hangar. Click, click, click. She reached the podium. She stood next to Silas, who looked like a child who had just realized the monster under the bed was real. She didn't look at him. She reached out and took the microphone from his hand. He was too stunned to resist. She turned to the crowd of 300 shocked faces. She adjusted the stand. You're right, Silas, she said, her voice amplified, crystal clear and steady. I wasn't baking cookies. She paused, letting the silence stretch until it was painful. I was auditing the books. The phrase hung in the air like smoke. I was auditing the books. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The senator dropped his fork. The press, sensing blood in the water, zoomed their lenses in. Silas stood frozen next to her, his hand still shaped as if he were holding the microphone that was no longer there. Auditing. Silas finally sputtered, his voice cracking without amplification, audible only to the front rows. Camilla, you're drunk. Get off the stage. He reached for her arm, trying to physically steer her away from the podium. She's having a breakdown, he shouted to the crowd, forcing a panicked laugh. Too much champagne. I'm so sorry, everyone. But before his hand could touch her, the head of security, Mr. Sterling, stepped onto the stage from the wings. He didn't grab Camilla. He stepped between them, placing a massive hand on Silas's chest, pushing him back 3 feet. Do not touch the chairman, Sterling said, his voice low and menacing. The what? Silas blinked, looking from Sterling to Camilla. She's not the chairman. She's my wife. She's a gardener. Camilla ignored his outburst. She reached into the podium, where Silas had hidden his notes, and pulled out a sleek, black remote control. It wasn't the clicker for his PowerPoint presentation. It was a master override for the venue's AV system. She looked at the audience. Her gaze was cool, clinical. She wasn't a scorned woman screaming at a cheating husband. She was a CEO addressing a shareholder meeting. Silas just told you that building an empire requires sacrifice, Camilla said into the mic. He told you it requires integrity. He told you about his long trips to Dubai and Paris to secure the future of this company. She pressed the button on the remote. You think this is manipulation, Silas? She asked, her voice calm against his hysteria. Let's listen to what you really think about the people in this room. The screen behind them shifted from the financial documents to a video file. The audio crackled to life. It was unmistakable. It was Silas's voice, clear and booming. Audio, I'm going to take Blackwood Aviation public, dump the old investors, and we'll be billionaires, Veronica. Real billionaires. The crowd went stiff. The old investors he was referring to were sitting in the front 3 rows. They were the men and women who had funded his startup. Audio continues. And the board? Those dinosaurs? I'll force them out by Christmas. They're too stupid to see the pivot coming. Silas froze on stage. He recognized the conversation. It was from the hotel room in Paris, the room where he thought he was safe. And as for the senator, the recording continued, Silas's voice dripping with disdain. I just have to donate to his re-election fund and he'll sign whatever regulatory waiver I put in front of him. He's cheap. Senator Davies, who had been standing near the stage, turned a shade of purple usually reserved for bruised fruit. He looked at Silas with eyes that promised a federal investigation by morning. That's out of context. Silas screamed, sweat now pouring down his forehead, melting his stage makeup. That's a legal recording. That's inadmissible. We aren't in a court of law, Silas, Camilla reminded him coldly. We are in the court of public opinion. And you are losing. She advanced on him, step by slow step. You called your investors dinosaurs. You called the senator cheap. And you call me simple. She gestured to the screen one last time. A new video played. It was the footage from the park, but zoomed in. It showed Silas handing the baby to Veronica. You claimed this child wasn't yours, Camilla said. But the DNA test I have in this portfolio says otherwise. You have a son, Silas. A son you treat like a prop for your ego. Veronica, sensing the ship was sinking, tried to slip away from her seat. The spotlight operator, taking a cue from Camilla's glance, swung the beam directly onto the mistress. She froze, trapped in the circle of light like a deer on a highway. Don't go, Ms. Miller, Camilla said into the mic. We haven't discussed your severance package yet. The audience let out a collective gasp. Silas looked from the screen to the senator, to the investors, and finally to Veronica. He realized the walls weren't just closing in. They had already crushed him. He had insulted everyone who could save him. He was standing on an island, and the water was rising fast. Silas was reeling, but he still had one card left to play, or so he thought. He decided to play the victim. He slumped his shoulders, looking at the ground, trying to summon a tear. Okay, he whispered into the microphone, his voice trembling with manufactured remorse. Okay, I made a mistake. I had an affair. I'm human. I was under immense pressure. The merger, the stress. I sought comfort. I'm sorry, Camilla. I'm sorry I lied about Dubai. He looked up, eyes pleading. But is that a reason to destroy the company? To destroy us? Can't we discuss this at home? It was a masterful performance. He was trying to pivot the narrative from criminal mastermind to flawed husband asking for mercy. Camilla didn't buy it for a second. You didn't just lie about Dubai, Silas, she said, her voice cutting through his pity party. You mocked me with it. She reached into the pocket of her red gown, a hidden pocket sewn specifically for this moment. She pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. Do you recognize this? She asked. Silas squinted. It was a receipt. When you came home from your trip, Camilla narrated to the audience. You brought me a gift. A box of chocolates. You told me you bought them at the Dubai duty-free. You told me you thought of me while you were rushing to catch your flight. She held the receipt up to the light. This is the receipt from the bodega on 54th Street. You bought them 10 minutes before you walked in the door. You spent $12.50. She let the paper flutter to the floor. Then she pulled out a second document, a printout of a credit card statement. And on that same day, she continued, her voice rising in intensity. You bought her. She pointed at Veronica, a Cardi diamond bracelet for $12,000. The contrast hit the room like a slap. $12.50 for the wife. $12,000 for the mistress. It wasn't about the money. It was about the valuation of a human being. The women in the audience, regardless of their net worth, felt a collective surge of fury. "You didn't just cheat, Silas," Camilla said, stepping into his personal space. "You devalued me. You treated me like an overhead cost you wanted to minimize." "It was a mistake," Silas yelled, snapping. "I bought the bracelet to keep her quiet. It didn't mean anything." "And the baby?" Camilla asked. "Does he mean anything? Or was the $450 cashmere romper you bought him just another hush payment?" Silas went silent. He had forgotten about the romper receipt she found in his laundry. "You built a life on lies," Camilla said. "You lied about the trip. You lied about the gifts. You lied about your love. And the worst part is, you thought you were clever. You thought I was too simple to check the timestamp on a receipt." She leaned in, her voice dropping to a whisper that the microphone still caught. "I run a sovereign wealth fund, Silas. I track billions of dollars in moving assets every day. Did you really think I couldn't track a box of chocolates?" Silas looked at her, and for the first time, he saw the machinery behind the eyes. He saw the cold, calculating intelligence he had ignored for 5 years. He realized that while he was playing house, she had been playing the long game. "You're a monster," Silas hissed, his facade completely gone. "No, Silas," Camilla replied, turning back to the crowd. "I'm a creditor, and I'm here to collect." The emotional destruction was complete. Silas was exposed as a liar, a cheat, and a fool. But he was still, technically, the CEO. He still held the title. He straightened his spine, trying to salvage the only thing he had left, his authority. "Fine," Silas spat, adjusting his tuxedo jacket. "You've made your point. You've embarrassed me. You've won the breakup. Congratulations." He turned to the security guards. "Now, remove her. I am the CEO of Blackwood Aviation. This is my event. Whatever personal grievances my wife has are irrelevant to the governance of this corporation." He looked at the board of directors in the front row. "Gentlemen, surely you see this for what it is? A domestic tantrum. We can't let personal drama affect the stock price. I demand order." The board members didn't look at him. They looked at Camilla. Camilla smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a judge delivering a verdict. "You seem confused about the chain of command, Silas," she said. She signaled to the projection booth. The screen changed one last time. It displayed a legal document, the bylaws of the Kensington Sovereign Fund. Specifically, Article 4, Section 2, the Morality and Misappropriation Clause. "Read it, Silas," Camilla commanded. Silas squinted at the massive text. "Any executive officer of a portfolio company who engages in the misappropriation of funds, fraud, or conduct that brings public disrepute to the fund shall be subject to immediate termination for cause, forfeiture of all unvested equity, and immediate repayment of all outstanding loans." "So," Silas scoffed, "that's boilerplate. You can't fire me without a board vote. And I control the board." "Do you?" Camilla asked. She looked at the front row. "All those in favor of the immediate termination of Silas Blackwood as CEO, please stand." Silas watched in horror. The CFO stood up. The COO stood up. The 3 independent directors stood up. Even the old dinosaurs he had mocked in the recording stood up. Every single person in the front row rose to their feet. They stood in silence, looking at Silas with a mixture of pity and disgust. "The motion carries," Camilla announced. "You are fired, Silas. Effective immediately. You can't do this." Silas screamed, his voice cracking into a shriek. "I built this company. I am Blackwood Aviation." "You were Blackwood Aviation," Camilla corrected. "Now, you are a trespasser." She turned to Mr. Sterling. "Please escort Mr. Blackwood off the premises. And Sterling, make sure you retrieve his company badge and phone before he leaves. We wouldn't want him stealing any more data." "With pleasure, Madam Chairman," Sterling grunted. He stepped forward, grabbing Silas by the arm. This time, it wasn't a gentle guide. It was a vice grip. "Get your hands off me." Silas struggled, flailing like a child. "I'm a billionaire. You work for me." "I work for her," Sterling said, jerking his head toward Camilla. "And you're not a billionaire, son. You're broke. The fund just seized your accounts to cover the embezzlement." The reality hit Silas like a freight train. He stopped fighting. He looked at Camilla, his eyes wide with terror. "Camilla," he begged, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Please. The house. The cars. Don't take everything." Camilla looked at him from the podium. She looked like a statue made of ice and rubies. "You left me for a cheaper model, Silas," she said, her voice echoing through the silent hangar. "Now you can live like one." She turned her back on him. "Take him away." Sterling dragged the screaming Exio down the stairs, past the stunned senator, past the weeping mistress, and out into the cold night air. The doors slammed shut behind him with a finality that shook the floor. Camilla stood alone on the stage, under the jet he had built, wearing the jewels he couldn't afford. She took a deep breath. The air tasted clean. "Now," she said to the room, smoothing her red dress, "let's talk about the future." Silas had been dragged out, but his scent, a mix of expensive cologne and fear, still lingered on the stage. The doors swung shut, sealing his fate, but the room remained frozen in a stunned silence. The elite of the city were waiting to see what the woman in the red dress would do next. Camilla didn't step down. She didn't apologize for the interruption. She stayed at the podium, assuming the mantle of power that had always been hers by birthright. "I apologize for the disruption," she said, her voice steady and commanding. "But in the world of finance, toxicity must be purged before growth can resume." She looked down at the front row, specifically at the empty seat where Silas had been, and then slightly to the left, where Veronica Miller was still sitting, trembling in her gold sequins. "Some of you are wondering about the severity of this action," Camilla continued. "You are wondering if firing him was enough." She signaled the booth. The screen behind her changed to a terrifyingly simple graphic. "Asset Recovery Protocol. Active. When the Kensington Sovereign Fund calls a debt due for fraud," Camilla explained, "we do not just terminate employment. We trigger the Personal Guarantee Clause." Silas signed this clause 5 years ago. It states that if he is found guilty of embezzlement, his personal assets are liquidated to repay the stolen capital. She looked directly at Veronica. "That means the penthouse is gone," Camilla listed, ticking them off on her fingers. "The Aston Martin is gone. The offshore accounts are frozen." She paused, her eyes locking onto the diamond bracelet glittering on Veronica's wrist, the one Silas had bought for $12,000 using the credit card. "And," Camilla added, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, "it means that any gifts purchased with stolen company funds are considered stolen property. They are evidence." Veronica instinctively covered the bracelet with her other hand. "Security," Camilla called out calmly. "Ms. Miller is wearing 40 carats of stolen company inventory. Please recover it before she leaves the premises." 2 junior security officers stepped toward Veronica. The humiliation was absolute. She wasn't just the other woman anymore. She was a fence for stolen goods. The room watched as the glamour was stripped away, layer by layer, revealing the ugly greed underneath. "And one more thing," Camilla addressed the crowd. "Silas believes he is merely facing unemployment. He is mistaken. The theft of pension funds is a federal crime. My legal team has already forwarded the server logs to the Southern District of New York." She looked at the closed doors. "He isn't walking out to his car, ladies and gentlemen. He is walking into a crime scene." Veronica Miller had spent 6 months thinking she had won the lottery. She had snagged a billionaire, secured a townhouse, and was pregnant with the heir to an aviation empire. But as the security guards approached her, demanding the bracelet, the illusion shattered. Panic set in. She wasn't a mastermind. She was a survivor, and survivors know when to cut the rope. "Wait!" Veronica shrieked, standing up and backing away from the guards. "I didn't know. I didn't know he stole the money." "Ignorance is not a defense for receiving stolen property," one of the guards said, holding out his hand. "The bracelet, Mississippi." Veronica frantically unclasped the jewelry, throwing it into the guard's hand as if it were burning her skin. She looked around the room, seeing the judgment in 300 pairs of eyes. She realized her social standing was vaporized. She needed to distance herself from the sinking ship That was Silas Blackwood. "I'm a victim here," she yelled, her voice shrill and desperate. "He lied to me too. He told me he was divorced. He told me he was worth billions." She looked up at Camilla on the stage, trying to find an ally in the woman she had planned to replace. "You have to believe me. I didn't love him. I barely liked him. He was just a wallet." The confession hung in the air. He was just a wallet. Camilla smiled, a cold, satisfied curve of her lips. She had suspected it, but to hear it shouted in front of the entire city was a gift. "We know, Veronica," Camilla said into the microphone. "We have the recordings of you talking to your boyfriend, Jax. We know you were planning to leave Silas as soon as the money ran out." Veronica went pale. You know about Jax?" "Everyone knows now," Camilla said. The crowd murmured. Silas's great love affair, the passion that had caused him to destroy his marriage and his career, was a scam. He had ruined his life for a woman who was laughing at him behind his back. "Get her out of here." Camilla dismissed her with a wave of her hand. "She's cluttering the aisle." Veronica fled, running toward the exit, her heels clacking on the floor, weeping not for Silas, but for herself. She ran right out the doors and straight into the nightmare waiting outside. Outside the museum, the cool night air usually offered relief. For Silas Blackwood, it offered only flashing lights. He had been shoved out the side exit by Mr. Sterling. He was straightening his tuxedo, trying to regain some shred of dignity, preparing to yell at the valet to bring his car so he could speed away and call a lawyer. "Get my car." Silas barked at the valet stand. "Now, or you're fired too." "I don't think you'll be needing a car, sir," a voice said from the shadows. Silas turned. It wasn't the valet. 3 black SUVs were parked at the curb, blocking the driveway. Men in windbreakers with yellow lettering were stepping out. The lettering didn't say police. It said FBI. "Silas Blackwood?" the lead agent asked, stepping into the streetlight. Yes," Silas stammered. "Look, this is a misunderstanding. My wife is having a mental breakdown. She hacked the system. I didn't steal anything." "We have the wire logs, Mr. Blackwood," the agent said, bored. $5 million from the ERISA Protected Pension Fund to an account in the Seychelles registered in your name. That's wire fraud, securities fraud, and embezzlement. It was a loan." Silas screamed as the agent grabbed his wrist. "I was going to put it back." "You can explain that to the judge," the agent said. He spun Silas around and slammed him against the hood of the Aston Martin he no longer owned. The cold steel of the handcuffs clicked around his wrists, a sound far louder than the applause he had received an hour ago. "You're making a mistake," Silas cried, tears streaming down his face, mixing with the sweat and makeup. "I'm a CEO. I'm a visionary. You have the right to remain silent," the agent recited. Silas looked around wildly for help. He saw Veronica running out of the museum exit. "Veronica," he screamed. "Baby, tell them. Call my lawyer. Tell them it was a mistake." Veronica stopped. She looked at Silas, handcuffed, bent over the hood of a car, surrounded by feds. She looked at the flashing lights. She didn't run to him. She turned her head, pulled her coat collar up to hide her face, and walked quickly in the opposite direction, disappearing into the darkness. Silas watched her go. The woman he had destroyed his life for didn't even look back. He was truly, completely alone. The doors of the museum opened one last time. Camilla walked out, flanked by Mr. Sterling. She had abandoned the microphone, but she still carried the aura of command. She stopped at the top of the stairs, looking down at the driveway where the FBI agents were shoving Silas into the back of the SUV. She descended the stairs slowly, her red dress flowing like blood on the pavement. The agent paused, seeing her approach. He recognized authority when he saw it. He stepped back, giving her a moment. Silas looked up from the back seat. His tuxedo was torn, his hair wild, his eyes rimmed with red. He looked at Camilla, and for the first time, he didn't see a boring housewife. He saw the architect of his doom. "Camilla," he croaked, his voice broken. "Why? We could have fixed this. We could have just divorced. Why did you have to destroy me?" Camilla leaned down, looking through the open window. Her face was serene, stripped of all the anger and pain he had caused her. "Because you didn't just break a vow, Silas," she said softly. "You broke the trust of the people who worked for you. You stole their futures to buy a prostitute a bracelet." "I'm sorry," Silas sobbed, the reality finally crushing him. "I'll give it back. I'll do anything." Please, call them off. You have the power. You own the fund. You can stop this. I do have the power, Camilla agreed. And I am using it. She stood up, signaling the agent that she was finished. You thought you married a trophy, Silas, she said, her voice carrying on the wind. But you married a bank. And you just defaulted. Camilla, he screamed as the agent slammed the door. She didn't flinch. She watched the SUV pull away, the sirens wailing into the New York night. She stood there until the taillights faded to nothing. It's over, Sterling said quietly from behind her. No, Camilla said, turning back toward the museum, where her board of directors was waiting. It's just beginning. 6 months later, the headline on the Wall Street Journal read, Kensington Aerospace posts record profits under new leadership. Camilla sat in the CEO's office, formerly Silas's office, which had been completely remodeled. The chrome and black leather bachelor pad aesthetic was gone, replaced by warm oak, cream linens, and fresh orchids. The room breathed quiet power. She signed the final document on her desk. It was the deed transfer. The Hamptons estate, the townhouse, and the Manhattan penthouse had all been sold. The proceeds had been used to fully replenish the employee pension fund, with a 10% bonus for every worker added by the Kensington Trust. She walked to the window. Down below, the city moved on. Silas was currently residing in a federal correctional facility in Otisville, awaiting a trial where the evidence against him was insurmountable. He had pleaded guilty to avoid a 20-year sentence, accepting a plea deal of 8 years. He would be nearly 50 when he got out, with no money, no reputation, and no family. Veronica had vanished into obscurity. Last Camilla heard, she was working as a hostess in a club in Miami, looking for her next mark. Camilla turned back to the room. She wasn't lonely. She was free. She had taken a company that was rotting from the inside and turned it into a beacon of ethical industry. She had proven that the gardener could handle the weeds. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from the senator asking for a meeting to discuss green aviation initiatives. Camilla smiled. She picked up her bag, not a beige tote, but a structured red leather briefcase. She walked out of the office, her heels clicking on the floor with the rhythm of a woman who owned the ground she walked on. She had lost a husband, but she had found herself. And that was a trade she would make every single time. Silas Blackwood learned the hard way that the quietest person in the room is often the one holding the loudest cards. He gambled his life on a lie, and the house, specifically his wife, always wins. If you enjoyed seeing justice served, hit that subscribe button. And let me know in the comments. If you were Camilla, would you have visited him in prison or left him to rot in silence? I'm Mr. James. See you in the next story.